Hello everyone and welcome to this lecture in the GitHub Masterclass. Today we are going to learn about forking a repository. So what does it mean to fork a repository and why do we even care about forking? Let's learn all about it. Essentially, the reason why we fork a repository is if we want to create a new repository which is an exact copy of an already existing repository. Why would we want to do that? Well, if our friend has already worked on a huge code before, and if we just want to contribute by making some changes to that code, we can fork the repository of our friend into our account and then we can make the changes in that repository. Or if there is some famous repository such as the Julia language, which we have seen often in this lecture series, we can even fork famous repositories like this and we can make open source contributions. This is also great to build your profile if you have open source contributions. So when you fork a repository, it creates a rough copy in your GitHub account, and then you can make changes in that, and then you can create a pull request to the main repository. Let's see how to do this. So first, I'm going to show you how to create a fork of another person's repository. So here you can see I have another GitHub account which looks something like this, and let's take a particular repository which is global COVID-19 project. This is a project which I worked on during the PhD. Now let's say if you are a student who wants to fork this repository, you can see that 8 people have forked this already and there are 17 stars. So you can click on fork over here. Now when you click on the fork over here, you see that Vijuara AI, which is the repository which we are working with through this, or this is the account which I've been showing you through this lecture series. What this fork will do is that it will create a copy of the COVID-19 repository, but it will create it under the account of Vijuara AI. So this repository will be copied into my account and then I'll be free to experiment with changes and that will not affect the original project. So it's like a copy has been made into my account. So if you want to copy the master branch or the main branch only, you can click this. If you want to copy the full project with the entire branch, with all the branches, you can deselect this option. I am going to deselect this right now. Sometimes deselecting this then takes a very long time to fork the repository if there are a huge number of branches. But in my main repository, there was only one branch. So I know that it will not take too much time. And then I click on create fork. So when you click on create fork, you will see that it will create a copy of the repository into your account. And it might take some time based on the files, etc. But now you'll see that it's happened very quickly. So the fork happened in a matter of 5 seconds. And now you can make some changes. So let's say if you want to make some contributions here, what I'm going to do is that I'm just going to make changes in the readme file, and remember it's for demo purposes only. You should not fork repositories and make random changes such as these. You should always make meaningful changes. So actually let me show you an example of a meaningful change. So if you go to code and if you look at any particular code file, and let's say you can add comments. Let's say if I think that something is not very well commented, I can say that this step loads Julia packages, then this step initializes the neural network architecture. Now see, these are thoughtful comments because here I am saying that hey, your original code did not have too many comments attached with it, and I have just added some comments on this code, which will help the users who go through your code. So if you believe that these changes are worth it, you can considering merging my changes. So what now you can do after this is that you can click on commit changes, and you can click, and then you have to add the commit message. So then we can say that updated this file with comments, and then you can say that commented the code file, this particular name, to improve readability and user understanding. You should always make thoughtful and detailed descriptions like these. And let me commit it directly to the master branch. So now this has been committed, and now the changes are pushed to my repository, right? What I can do now is that I can create a pull request actually. So what I can do is that these changes I've made, but they are in my local repository. I now want to create a pull request to the original person who worked on this project so that they can take a look at it. So I can create a pull request, and I'm saying updated this file with comments and commented the code to improve readability and user experience. And then I can say that I feel that commenting the code will significantly improve user understanding. So you can add better comments. You can even make it as detailed as possible, and then you can create pull request. Great, right? Now let me go to that repository of mine. So if you go to that repository, now this is my repository over here. And when I click on the pull request, you will see that a pull request has been created just right now. And when you click on this, you will see the that Visuara AI has created this pull request. And these are the comments which have been added in the pull request itself. Then you can see that, okay, what are the files which this user has changed. Then I can go to file change, and I can see that, okay, they have added comments over here. This looks pretty useful. In fact, I think adding comments will really improve my code. So what I can then do is that I like these changes which have been added, and then this branch seems to have no conflicts with the main branch also. Awesome. So then I can go ahead and merge the pull request. I've not logged into this account right now, so I'm not getting the option to merge pull request. But this is the way you can fork a repository, and you can create a pull request to the person whose repository you are forking. And you can do this exercise even on open source projects, but do it with caution and do it only when you have thoughtful comments or thoughtful feedback to add. So for example, here is the Julia repository. It's a huge repository with 45,000 stars, and it's very famous. I can go ahead and fork this repository, and here I'm only going to copy the main branch, and I'll create a fork. Now this might take a bit more time because there are a lot more files over here, but let's see, I'm going to wait for some time until this forking proceeds. Awesome, right? The fork has been done. And then similar to what I showed you, if you have some thoughtful comments to add, if you go to the documentation, or the best place to start adding thoughtful comments is the documentation, because if you make changes in the main code, it will take a long time to merge. But if you think the documentation itself can be improved, the readme file can be improved, you can add some comments, and you can create a pull request. And then if it gets merged, then you will have your first open source contribution. That's actually awesome for your profile. And as you get more and more advanced, you can make more serious contributions to the main code, adding example files, adding example projects, etc. This is the advantage of forking. You can download and create a copy of someone else's project, make thoughtful additions and make changes, and then you can create a pull request. And then you can see whether that person is ready to merge the pull request or not. Okay, so this brings us to the end of this lecture where we learned about forking. You'll see that in this entire GitHub series, we have learned about a lot of commands. So let us actually review some of the commands which we have learned about. We started with commands such as git add, which adds files to the staging area. Then we learnt about git commit, which creates a snapshot of the file. Then we learnt about git push, which pushes changes from local to the remote. Then we learnt about, if we have local projects, how to convert them into remote projects using this command, which is called as git remote add origin. And after this, we learnt about branches. So we learned that one branch is like creating a whole alternate parallel universe where multiple developers can work on. And then you can push changes in your branch, and if the senior developer later approves it, then your code can be merged by the senior developer into the main branch itself. And the way to do this is through a pull request. So if your pull request is approved by the senior developer, your code will be merged from the branch in from your branch into the main branch. We also saw that there is a particular way or an etiquette to write PRs. You should always write detailed, thoughtful titles and descriptions. Be respectful to the person who is going to review your PR, because the person who is reviewing, especially in open source projects like Julia, they might get huge number of pull requests. So you need to be respectful of their time also. Then we saw if there are some changes in the remote, like in github.com, and if you want to bring those changes into local, the way to do it is git pull. So there is a difference between git push, which pushes the changes from local to remote, and git pull, which brings changes from remote to the local. So please try to understand the concept of remote and local. Remote is basically um, online, so github.com, and local is on your local PC. That's very important. That's a very important concept for you to remember. um, Awesome. And then finally, we looked about the last thing which we saw is, I think, forking. Yeah, so forking a repository is the last thing which we learned about, where we saw it's about creating a copy onto your account, making changes, creating a pull request, and then asking for the review. Through forking repositories, you can make open source contributions, but again, be thoughtful about it, be respectful, and only create a pull request if you have significant changes to add. Thank you so much, everyone. That brings us to the end of this lecture.